Hello, my name is Craig Hight. The objective for me in this presentation is just to give you a very brief overview of mockumentary to try and give you an idea of what it is and how you might be should be thinking about it in relation to documentary um, culture and documentary forms, and thinking about how mockumentary sits in the ongoing kind of evolution and progression of documentary culture as a whole. So I'm quite low tech here, but here's a few ideas. So mockumentary, from my perspective, is thinking about this as a discourse, and at the core of this is the appropriation of codes and conventions. And more typically, the core of mockumentary is the appropriation of documentary codes and conventions, but mockumentary discourse has broadened much more than that in the last 10, 15 years particularly. Mockumentary is directed towards a knowing audience. This is an audience which is familiar with codes and conventions of documentary and related forms. And in general, we can talk about mockumentary as part of broader tendencies within popular culture that encourage reflexivity, which encourage audiences to think about the construction of documentary, how it's put together, the way and what's behind the agenda of documentary and non-fiction and related forms. If we think in really basic terms, one of the core elements of documentary we could say is a call to action, right? It's like, here's something important and you need to be thinking about this, you need to go out and act on this knowledge. Well, mockumentary is a different kind of sense, a different kind of space that gets opened up. And I like to think about mockumentary as involving a call to play. Right, so it's a flag to audiences that they're playing with some of their expectations about documentary, about what they're seeing on the screen as being real, about the types of practices that create reality. And mockumentary is putting those into play in a variety of ways. And one of the things that you might like to think about is mockumentary parallels things that are going on within documentary itself. And as documentary becomes more complicated, you think about the way documentary forms have evolved and become more complex and layered across film, across television, and the way in which documentary and non-fiction and related hybrid forms, I'm talking about reality TV and fact fiction forms, as that broader documentary culture becomes more complicated, mockumentary parallels those, right? So a given mockumentary references specific codes and conventions and the sets of ideas and assumptions we have around those. Just briefly, the first time the label mockumentary was used was in relation to This Is Spinal Tap, which is a fake rockumentary, and it's a satirical text, so most people assume that mockumentary is all satirical, which is not necessarily the case. So thinking about how you might analyze a mockumentary, one of the layers that you can think about is what are the codes and conventions being referenced? What are the ways in which we need to be thinking about these? What is the overall agenda of a mockumentary? And I'm listing these very, very quickly, but mockumentaries often used just as a kind of a gimmick. There's no real sense of commentary on the forms that are being referenced. Is it about documentary culture, or is it just there's a documentary look and feel, and it's about something else? There are a number of interesting examples of dramatic mockumentary, and you can look those up. The major tendency, of course, is for parody and satire, and they are the ones that people think about when they think about mockumentary. And some recent patterns that you might find interesting: mockusoaps, which is a term where mockumentary television series that reference docusoaps, which is a hybrid television form. And found footage films, there's a proliferation of many of these kinds of films which claim to show footage, video footage, cam footage, surveillance footage that's been found about a particular event. And that's something that's just revitalized horror, sci-fi, superhero. It's been used in a number of different situations. And that's another interesting kind of pattern in recent mockumentary. Have fun.